everybody, Tina here. If you're an advisor looking for that one conference that gives you inspiration, connection, and proven best practices to grow your firm, Excel is the place. And it's happening September 13th to 15th in Las Vegas at the beautiful Cosmopolitan Hotel. I attended last year's event and cannot wait to be there again this year. The lineup is jaw-dropping. So head on over to Excel Conference, that's Excel with 2 L's. Check it out and use my discount code POWEL200 to receive $200 off the price of your ticket. See you there.
On this week's episode of In the Suite with Tina Powell.
Sometimes you're dealing with sensitive topics like maybe a senior investor, or maybe you're dealing with someone's children who you really just need to be able to have those delicate conversations, but be firm in them as well and make sure you're getting your point across. And I think for women especially, just having that ability to be able to have those conversations, attention to detail, those type of things. And not to say women are specifically better at that than men. Honestly, I have another woman on my team, but the 3 other analysts are men, and they do an amazing job as well. So definitely having that personality is key to being able to be successful in compliance.
Hi, this is Tina Powell, host of In the Suite, where I sit down with top women leaders and some of the biggest names in the financial services and the wealth management industry. Together, we'll discover some of their best secrets and top strategies to grow a great business, build a strong brand, and lead teams in the 21st century. I hope you'll enjoy hearing their amazing personal stories of triumph, trepidation, and transformation in hopes of becoming better leaders ourselves. The time for you to lead is now, and you're in the suite. Today, I'm ecstatic to welcome the first Chief Compliance Officer in the suite, namely Jessica Sexton from Independent Advisor Alliance. Based in Charlotte, North Carolina, Independent Advisor Alliance provides comprehensive solutions to allow financial advisors to move into private practice. When founder and CEO Robert Russo started the firm in 2013, he did so with only 7 advisors. At the time of this release, that firm has grown to over 215 partners across 23 states, and Jessica is part of the dream team that continues to pave the way for growth. But before becoming Chief Compliance Officer in February of 2014, Jessica went through a spectrum of experiences. She began her career at LPL Financial in 2006, where she attributes much of her growth to amazing managers and a supportive team. And then when the recession hit in 2009, she made an important transition to serve as a project manager for Impact Technologies Group. Thanks in part to keeping in touch and forming meaningful relationships at work. Jessica also holds Series 7, Series 24, and Series 66 licenses. In fact, one of the many gifts that you'll discover about Jessica Sexton in this episode is her ability to understand and know her own strengths, particularly in compliance, and her passion for back office operations. In today's episode, Jessica humanizes, demystifies, and bursts many negative connotations related to compliance. She gives us detailed answers on what exactly compliance entails and shares with us a real overview of her day-to-day responsibilities. Jessica also talks about the opportunities and challenges that she and compliance teams face and the skills needed to execute in the suite. Wow. Jessica Sexton, take a seat in the suite. It is so great to see you here today. I'm so excited for our conversation. Yes, our first Chief Compliance Officer of the season is here. You're the first one. I'm so excited.
You have shown more excitement for compliance than I think I've ever heard, because typically when they hear the CCO is here, they go,
oh, that's fun.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm really excited to actually shine a light on the work that you're doing and the work that Independent Advisor Alliance is doing, but more specifically to really introduce women and our male allies on this call to the field of compliance and talk about your exciting background. So could you tell the world, because we are now in 55 countries. So it
Wow.
is. So when I say the world, I really mean it. Who Independent Advisor Alliance is for people who aren't familiar with you.
Sure. So we are a registered investment advisor headquartered here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been operating as an RIA since 2014 when the first assets hit the firm, and we've just been growing and changing ever since. And our goal here at IAA is to serve not only as the compliance arm for our advisors, but as a resource and a partner. We always refer to our advisors and their practice as partner firms and not captive advisors, because we truly want to be that partner in their business to help them grow that business to be the best entrepreneurs they can be.
I would say, I think just the whole mantra about doing business, especially now after the pandemic, one thing that we learned from that is the need to have partners. It was always expressed, but now we really, really feel it. Our business here included, we've got lots of amazing, amazing partners. What's, I think, unique to today's conversation, this is the first time, Jessica, that we've had a chief compliance officer as a guest on the show. Compliance, I feel, could be such a great career field for so many people. And I would love for you to explain what a chief compliance officer does.
Right. The joke, of course, is that the compliance is the anti-sales division. And we here at IAA want to make sure that's certainly not the case. So as the CCO of Independent Advisor Alliance, my role here primarily is to ensure we have a robust compliance program for our advisors to help them do the business they want to do within the guardrails, right, of the regulatory bodies and your broker-dealers' rules and regulations and our rules and regulations as well. So we have a team here of 4 other compliance individuals, in addition to myself, that help support those advisors and making sure that they're doing everything they need to do, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and making sure we're also protecting the client, the end client, right? To make sure that they're getting the best service they can get as well.
Yeah. And that's what I receive shows and sometimes negative press. And I think that the media loves to shine a light on those types of stories. We've got shows like American Greed, but I would say the majority of firms, there's so much underlying, and in a financial advisory firm, all of your trades, all of your communications, your social media, your ethics, how you manage human capital, everything has to be documented. And I never knew that. I knew that there was some structure, obviously, some legal structure, but it wasn't until I was working in a firm, Jessica, that when you could see what's behind the hood, it's an enormous position.
It is. It's a big responsibility. Trust me, it keeps me up many nights. So, and I'm really glad I have the staff that I do here to help support me in making sure we're doing what we need to be doing. So you're right. We do things from reading emails to reviewing transactions to making sure best execution is happening. And all that needs to be documented, right? It doesn't help to tell a regulator, oh yeah, we did that. And they say, show me. Oh, well, okay. So we also have to make sure that we're documenting all of our work properly. And 9 times out of 10, that means that the advisors are documenting their selves properly. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more further on in the conversation, I'm sure. But it's a big undertaking to make sure that advisors are, number one, know the rules, right? They can't follow them if they don't know them. So we take a very proactive approach. We have monthly compliance calls where I go through with our advisors and their staff, their administrative staff who process the majority of their paperwork, right? Making sure that they understand what maybe with Form CRS coming out, right? That you have to provide that form in addition to your other disclosure brochures. Or maybe we're seeing repeat things happen during an audit that people just maybe forgot about or need reminded of. But so we talk about all of those hot topic items on that call. And it's great because it gives advisors and their staff a chance to ask questions to me directly, to hear each other's questions, to collaborate in that way. So it's just a great sounding board for advisors as well.
You seem to have your little mini fanocracy going on at Independent Advisor Alliance. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and it was one of the things that we love to do here in the suite, and that is to shine a light on women's leadership. But who better to shine a light on women's leadership using social media, no less, was your CEO, Robert Russo. And then the comments that followed. So for our listening audience here, This is in social media, Jessica, an example of best execution. And I want to put it out there because how many people are listening that are in positions of leadership now that too can shine the light on another human being within their organization, not necessarily a chief. It could be anybody. It could be your chief talent officer, your chief revenue officer, your VP. But here's what Robert Russo had to say. And I love it. I love it. 8 years ago today, Independent Advisor Alliance made a crucial hire that helped pave the way for who we are today. In her 8 years as CCO, only CCO IAA has ever had, IAA has gone from a startup RIA firm to surveying more than 15 billion in client assets. Thank you, Jessica Sexton, for your loyalty, friendship, and for being the best CCO our advisors and staff could ask for. Wow.
That definitely made me blush. Yeah, it was, what kind words, right? And I'm, as I think I mentioned to you before we started the podcast, I'm a very shy, quiet person. So for me to see that and hear that, that was just amazing. And also, as you mentioned, to see the feedback from the advisors that posted on that as well, it really touched me. It touched my heart, and it was really nice.
If you're looking for actionable advice and motivation to get you through your day, follow In the Sweet Pod, all one word, In the Sweet Pod on Instagram. One of our favorite quotes is from Ginny Rometty, the former CEO and executive chairman of IBM, the first woman to head the company. And she says this: "Don't let others define you, define yourself." We also want to give a big shout out to Birthing Out Bosses. Handle Birthing Out Bosses. Love it. That had this top comment. "It's easy to let others dictate how you think and feel, but that doesn't mean you have to listen to them. Define yourself how you want, not based on someone else's expectations of who they think you should be." So thanks again. Follow In the Sweet Pod. We'll see you over there. So here you were. So 8 years ago, a little tiny startup to 15 billion in assets in 8 years. And I look at that and I go, wow, that's a story. Before we even get to that part of the story, though, it says that you were the first chief compliance officer. I was looking at your background. How did you arrive? How did that opportunity fall in your lap?
Sure. So LPL Financial is our broker dealer. I actually started at LPL Financial when they opened their doors here in Charlotte in 2006, way back when. Seems like a million years ago now. But I actually started in the new accounts department. So I had no financial services background prior to coming to LPL. I had worked at a financial planning software company that made financial planning software for companies like AXA and Pac Life and all these big names. So when I moved to Charlotte, I started out there, went to LPL to get that experience. Working in finance here in Charlotte is a great foray into bigger and better things, right? So I started out there as a new accounts processor, basically processing widgets every day. I had the opportunity to get my Series 7, my 66, my 24. I was really lucky at LPL. I had amazing managers that really supported my growth. I can't say enough good things about them all. So that was amazing. So of course, I was at LPL from 2006 until 2009. And as we know, 2009 was also an amazing year, but not for the good reason. So yeah, by that time I had worked my way from processor to supervisor to manager. So I was in middle management there, and my whole department in Charlotte just got cut with the recession. So that was not a good day for anybody. But I was very lucky in that the financial planning company I had worked for previously, they were a small family-run company, and I kept a good relationship with them. And they had an opening for me to go back there. Back when so many others were looking for work, I was really fortunate. So I feel very lucky there. So I went back there for several years, and then I started work as an OSJ delegate for another advisor here local in Charlotte. And a contact I kept in touch with at LPL was assisting Robert Russo, our CEO, when he was just getting the RIA off the ground. She was doing transitions for his advisors, helping them get on board at LPL. And she said, "I know someone named Jessica who is kind of looking to make a change, and I think she'd be a great fit here." So I met with Robert, and the rest is history.
That's a great story. I think a couple of things that I just want to pause and reflect, because if we go back into that time machine, 2000, 2010, 2008. Gosh, it was an awful period because we couldn't see two steps in front of us. You felt like you were trapped in this vacuum and you didn't know how long the vacuum was going to last. Right. And a lot of us made a lot of important life and career decisions. And it's funny because here you think that it's the worst time in your life and that it was a springboard to the best time in our life. And I feel like that draws a parallel to the pandemic as well. We're all sucked into a period of time. Again, nobody knows how long things are going to last. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of volatility. There's not clarity. You don't know what you're dealing with. It's very scary. It's very uncertain. And a lot of people have made life decisions during those times. So we can't, while our tendency is like, and it is awful for a lot of people. So I don't want to downplay that. I think it's the importance of also too building networks, right? When you say to keep those networks and those friendships going.
I'm the type of person, I don't burn bridges. If you can at all avoid it, it never works out well. And so I always try to maintain those relationships and keep in touch with folks. And you're right. When I left LPL, it was a devastating time in my life. I had worked so hard to get to that position, coming in at 7 a.m. and not leaving till 6 p.m. and just working your tail off. And then you just get let go. They say it's not personal, but sure feels personal when it's you. And so that was really difficult. It was difficult for my team. It was difficult for me and the other managers that got let go with me throughout the whole firm. And so, but you're right. I always kept in touch with folks, not only from, like I said, the financial planning software company that I worked at. I still keep in touch with those folks. I still keep in touch with the people that I knew from the very beginning at LPL. So it's just great to have that support network.
Yeah. And now you have, so you're 150 partner firms. We talk a lot about growth, innovation, best business practices. Even if you're not in the financial services industry, you might be listening to this podcast and you might be in your own business, or you might be a female leader. You might be an intrapreneur, not necessarily an entrepreneur, being in a company and head of a division and trying to grow that. So I would love to hear what you see. You're in compliance, you're in more of like what I'll call the legal arm, the regulatory arm of the organization. And you've had all of this growth. What do you see as part of the secret sauce that your company is doing that allowed you to scale and grow to that level?
It's been amazing to watch IAA grow, right? So just to give you perspective of where we started, we were in a very small office suite in a condo. I say condo like an office condo, right? And there was a handful of offices. We were doubling up, sometimes tripling up in offices. We had one of our employees who's still here. He sat at another employee's little baby IKEA desk that he brought in that was his son's. And he was parked right in front of my desk. And it was a hilarious picture, I have to tell you. But we had one bathroom for 10 people in the office. So we made do, and we just really rolled up our sleeves and did the work. And Robert did an amazing job with recruiting these advisors. We also had the help of other recruiters here at IAA during that time. And our infrastructure, the bare bones of our company, right, is we offer compliance services, right? But so does everyone else. So you have to, right? It's a necessary evil, quote unquote. So Robert wanted to make sure we had other services to offer our advisors. So what else can we do besides compliance, right? So over the years, we've just built out, as I had mentioned before, I think just a multifaceted approach for our advisors and services for them to really take advantage of and utilize and help them build their practice. So things like HR services, if they want to attract talent from administrative staff to junior advisors, we handle their payroll. So they don't have to worry about that. They can just sign up for our W-2 program and their staff we'll handle all the payroll for their staff, provide their staff benefits, et cetera. So that's been a big boon for them. We also have business consultants for them to kind of utilize as far as maybe they're having an issue with the custodian, or maybe they have a question as to how to accomplish something. That business consultant is really their liaison to help them achieve what they want to achieve and to get them in front of the right people to ask those questions and to make things happen. They also get a dedicated compliance analyst. So way back when, it was just me. I was the only one handling the advisors. But of course, as we grew, that wasn't going to cut it. So we needed to hire additional compliance staff. Well, now our partner firms, they have their own dedicated compliance analyst. And that analyst kind of learns their business, knows the folks in their office, they know what they're trying to accomplish, and that's their go-to person for compliance needs. And if they don't know the answer, they can get them the answer, whether that's from me or from LPL or whoever. So we make sure we just have a robust set of services to offer those advisors and the interpersonal relationships as well. we always try to bring potential advisors into the office to meet Robert, to meet me, to meet our staff, to meet who their dedicated compliance analyst would be, to put sort of a face with a name or a task to humanize what we do here. When you call into a big firm, you're a number. You're calling someone, you hang up, you call back, you're not going to get that same person. So just really customizing that experience for them.
Yeah, it goes back to Robert's post that there were other advisors that champion you there. Now, you've obviously been at Independent Advisor Alliance now for 8 years. So as you approach compliance, Jessica, as a career opportunity, there might be other women and men who are listening right now. Maybe it's an opportunity for them. And I would love for you to speak along some of the skills, like why would compliance be a great next best opportunity for even a second career person? I feel like there's so much there to unpack, but if you could maybe just extract some of the things that rise to the top where the profession really aligns with certain people, I would love to shine a light on that.
Sure. So I had wanted to get into compliance shortly after I started at LPL. That was sort of my career path there from where I wanted to go. So I worked closely with their compliance department, got to know those folks there. And it was just a career path that I really could see myself in. Again, I am an advisor. I am not. I am a terrible salesperson. I wouldn't cut it. But where my strengths lie and where a lot of folks in a back office or compliance specifically, where their strengths lie are, number one, attention to detail. You have to be able to sit there and be able to go through things with a fine-tooth comb. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of times those things are really boring and it can really drain you, but you have to just have the tenacity and the fortitude to be able to look at what you're looking at and know what you're looking for and to go through those things, again, with that attention to detail with a fine-tooth comb. So making sure you're documenting what you're reviewing. Why is this suitable? Why did you let this go through? Or why didn't you? And our advisors as well, they call us, I'd say I'm not an advisor, but they call us all the time for advice. Hey, I have a client here's what they're going through with their family. I'm really worried about this because of X, Y, and Z. How should I proceed? What should I do to make sure I'm protecting myself? And having those conversations. And sometimes they're tough conversations. Sometimes you're dealing with sensitive topics like maybe a senior investor, or maybe you're dealing with someone's children who you really just need to be able to have those delicate conversations, but be firm in them as well and make sure you're getting your point across. And I think for women, especially, just having that ability to be able to have those conversations, attention to detail, those type of things. And not to say women are specifically better at that than men. Honestly, I have another woman on my team, but the 3 other analysts are men and they do an amazing job as well. So definitely having that personality is key to being able to be successful in compliance. And again, we joke about compliance being super boring and all that stuff, but it's not always boring. There's a lot of exciting things that happen. Whether you come across an interesting email, 99% of the time it's nothing, but you come across some interesting stuff, I'll tell you. Won't go into any details there, but you do come across interesting things and investigating things as well. Sometimes there's certain paths we need to go down and dig really deep into, and it's more of an investigation into what happened and why, and involving other parties with that. So that's also very interesting from that perspective.
I give compliance so much credit, and believe it or not, marketing does have a love relationship with compliance. I just want to put that out there, Jessica, because we like to back in. We like to know who the chief compliance officer is and then say, what do you need from us in order to be successful? And I think that marketing technology too has come a long way, that you've got the ability to put social through software that gets 2 sets of approvals, like a trade, which is also great. The opportunity also to standardize message, to pull from a library. There are things right now in marketing and social media that I think that make life a lot easier for compliance that didn't exist 5-10 years ago, but more specifically when advisors started to get on the social media bandwagon and they were like, okay, yes, now we can actually use it because your job, you have insight and you have visibility into the marketing suite now.
Absolutely. And that's a great point you make. Technology has helped compliance by leaps and bounds, and I have no doubt will continue to do that. When I started, It was spreadsheets. We were working off of Excel spreadsheets, just pulling reports, what we could, slicing and dicing the data. So you have to, honestly, another strength for compliance is Excel. The better you are in Excel, the easier your life's going to be and the more efficient you're going to be and the more things you're going to be able to find. And so that's where I started. I will say over the past few years, Robert has made a significant investment in technology specifically for our compliance department. We are no longer using spreadsheets for most of our work. Some of it we still have to, but there's a new software system that we brought on a couple of years ago that's been amazing as far as flagging certain things, bringing things to our attention, helping us communicate those type of things with the advisor. So we're not just sending emails back and forth, and record retention. And it's frustrating for advisors because all this new cool technology comes out all the time, whether it's for scheduling meetings with clients, social media, texting with clients, right? Advisors may ask, well, why can't I text my client? Well, because it's in writing and we have to read it. And so all that technology that now enables them to do that, to stay in the 21st century with technology, it's great because it helps us do our jobs more efficiently and it helps them build their business by keeping abreast of all those new fun and exciting things.
Are there things right now in regards to compliance that you could maybe highlight 3 trends? What's hot right now in compliance?
Sure. So as far as keeping up with compliance, the SEC and FINRA don't send you special delivery messages with all their changes. They just don't. You have to kind of find those on your own. But there's certainly a lot of resources you can use and go to get the latest information. I get emails all the time with regulatory changes, or maybe there's the SEC's top exam priorities for the year, right? That's a big one. We also leverage another asset for our advisors, quite frankly. We leverage compliance consultants and in-house legal counsel. So they, of course, have to keep on top of all those things and they make sure we are aware of them and keep on top of them. So having those resources, whether it's another group of folks like our compliance consultants that help us with that, or whether it's just knowing which websites to go to and subscribe to alerts to, those are all great resources to kind of stay on top of rules that are changing and enforcement. But as far as what some big themes are, the one I always go to, and it's not sort of anything that's new, it's actually as old as can be, is document, document, document. I can't tell you how many times it has saved an advisor, especially when a complaint comes through and the client's saying, well, we never talked about that. And I didn't tell him or her to do that. And the advisor can go back to their CRM system from a year and a half ago or 6 months ago or 2 weeks ago. On that day or right around that day, they met with the client and say, no, we did talk about that. Or at least they've got it in an email to say, as we discussed in our meeting when you were in our office yesterday, here's what we're going to do in your account, or here's what we discussed. Just documenting those interactions is critical. Whether it's, as I mentioned before, maybe a client complaint comes through, or when the regulators show up, right? They want to know, it's great to say you're doing those things, you have to prove it. And if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And that's one that is so easily put to the side or forgotten, or you're too busy, or you just don't think it's a priority, but it is so critical. So that is one I always like to try and drive home to our advisors and their staff. Just make sure you're taking those few minutes, whether it's right after it happens or 10 minutes at the end of the day, to make sure your notes are in order. They're not handwritten on a napkin with a coffee cup stain. Make sure it's in an electronic database or system where you can go to it and it's date and time stamped. That is just so important.
That's huge. I was a partner in a wealth management firm for 7.5 years. We had an SEC examination in June of 2010. The SEC came in, they gave us a list of randomly selected, I think there were probably 18 names, just randomly pulled. We want to see every form of correspondence, every email, every personal note, every note. And because we were using a CRM, Jessica, and back then I was putting them on our discs, right?
Whatever. Yeah,
exactly. And here's the other thing that I noticed that's different. And tell me if you agree with this. We're starting to see the intersection of financial wellness, but more importantly, dementia, as it relates to people making decisions later in life.
Right.
And that was something that surprised me. I would all of a sudden see like 80-year-olds who were widowed and now getting married. Like things that were like, isn't that interesting? And I think that it's incumbent in also to the advisor to say, hey, I noticed this strange behavior today. He wasn't right. He was a little foggy when I asked about. There's so many like little, to your point, you could put anything in there and you don't know if it's going to be needed from whatever side.
It could be totally relevant, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And how many advisors are still not utilizing a CRM, but they're utilizing Outlook as like a CRM tool and just looking at it from the lens of email? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make. And it leads me to my second point, which is senior investors, right? And vulnerable adults. So again, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with advisors where they call me and they say, Jessica, I had a client come in here. It's Mrs. Smith. Her husband passed away a year ago. She's a great lady. She's still very with it, but she's talking about this gentleman she just met online. And I know she's sending him money. She keeps asking me for distributions and all this money is pouring out of her account. And it's so heartbreaking, but it's again, that's another one of those delicate conversations, right? That you have to have. And I've had advisors just ready to tear their hair out because at the end of the day, it's the client's money. She can do with it what she wants, or he can do with it what he wants. But we try to put things in place to help alleviate that. We definitely want our advisors to bring that to our attention, document all those interactions very carefully right after they happen. And I've even had to make call outs to the client to say, Mrs. Smith, this is just your compliance department. We just want to call to verify this transaction. Can I ask what the distribution's for? Just kind of doing an extra checks and balance. And sometimes at the end of the day, you can't prevent it, right? They're going to tell you what they tell you and that's it. But at least you've done everything you could to try to prevent that from happening. But yeah, the senior investors, right? That's the other big one that we want to make sure we're protecting those folks and vulnerable adults. We want to make sure we have training in place for advisors to know what those red flags are when a client maybe is slipping into that area where, hey, she called me to ask me this question and then she called me back 2 hours later to ask me the same question. That happens a lot.
That's interesting.
Yes. And of course, they don't want to come out and ask their client, hey, you just asked me that. Are you okay? Or it's a really touchy conversation to have. But again, that's why those trusted contacts are so important. Making sure you're suggesting to those clients, hey, why don't you bring your daughter? Why don't you bring your son to this meeting? Just a second pair of ears to make sure we're all good. So yeah, that's definitely another area where regulators are wanting to make sure that clients are protected.
My mother has been a widow and she's listening to this podcast. Hi, Mom. Love you, Mom. When she was widowed, Jessica, she was immediately targeted.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah, exactly. She was immediately targeted. And another takeaway that I want from women listening to this podcast today is that it goes both sides too. You should be documenting your interaction with your advisors, but be on the lookout for scams and all of a sudden people friending you on Facebook, just the suspicious behavior. And don't be afraid also too to talk about it with your advisor.
Right. Yep. The depth of that relationship is very important. It's knowing that person, knowing their family, knowing who they talk to, what their interests are, what's normal for them. You need to know what's normal for them. And that's the only way you can identify what's not normal. So yeah, making sure those relationships are developed is just key. And to your point, my parents are in their 70s. And it was funny. My mom the other day was complaining to me, your father gets so many calls and texts from these people. We don't know who they are and all these numbers. And I'm like, well, tell Dad to quit friending every person that asks for a friend request on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, just only friend people you love it because you're right. They are targeted just based on their age alone. And widows, of course, widowers, same thing, right? They're unfortunately just easier targets for these folks to take advantage of.
One of the things that I saw that you were doing in terms of education is that you have a series on YouTube too. I just love the way that our industry is like, there's this emphasis on education and creating videos on YouTube, using social media as a platform to educate, to give people great information. And it's exciting to see firms now really jump on the bandwagon of that content creation that could either go to the end client or can go to other advisors. So I wanted to just give you kudos on that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Our marketing team has done an amazing job with that series on YouTube because again, not only is it fun for us, right? It's fun to do those type of things, but it's good for advisors too, because we're in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've got a good number of advisors that are really local to us here, but we've got advisors in California who may never meet face to face. And so it gives them an opportunity to get to know not only what someone really looks like and how they talk but to really get a deeper dive into who they are and what they do. It really helps personalize it.
The lack of financial literacy is an economic and public health crisis because being financially literate is essential to improving America's standard of living and reducing income inequality. That's where Financial Fitness Group comes in. They're helping empower people by making learning about finances easy, effective, and fun. FFG is the leading provider of unbiased financial education to banks, credit unions, advisors, government agencies, and employers across the nation. Visit financialfitnessgroup.com today to learn more.
So there was another thing that I read in your background that you and I share a hobby in common. And so you ride horses.
Oh my goodness. Yes. That's amazing. Oh, I'm so excited to hear that.
Oh my goodness. So I'm excited to hear it. I'd love to learn a little bit of the backstory. How often do you ride? When did you discover horseback riding?
Sure. So I started out at a local barn in my area when I was like 12 years old. I think my mom signed my sister and I up for lessons, and we did it for like a year and then kind of fell out of it and moved on to other interests. And then when I was actually in college, I was sort of living in an area where all these farms and barns were. And I was like, what? I really enjoyed that. Let me see if I can kind of pick it back up again. And so I did. So I picked it back up again, I think when I was 18, 19. Then shortly thereafter, I took out a small loan from the bank and bought my own horse. And so that was my first major purchase as a real adult. Bought my own horse and just it was a lot of fun. It was something I really enjoyed, and it was something I felt like I'm out of high school now. I'm not doing sports anymore. Here's something that I can do that keeps me active and that I really love and enjoy. And as being a fellow horse lover, it's just so therapeutic. Not only riding, but just being around them, just being at the barn, right? It's your happy place. So something as simple as grooming your horse, all that, it's just very therapeutic and developing that bond with them. And I just love it. So I did that in my late teens, early 20s. And then when I moved, I'm originally from Northeast Ohio. And when I moved down here to Charlotte in 2005, I sadly, the prices down here in Charlotte were a little more than I could afford. So I had to say goodbye to my horse. And so I moved down here and did the whole develop your career and get married and have kids and all these things that folks do. And then once my daughter got old enough, my daughter's 9 now. So once she turned, I think 6, I was ready to sign her up for lessons. And I went to her lessons a few times and I was like, I can't just stand here and watch her ride. And her trainer was like, you need to get back on. So picked it up again. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Oh,
maybe one day I'll own my own horse again.
Yeah, I don't own a horse.
Convince my husband to get on the bandwagon.
I was so surprised, Jessica, that you could lease a horse like you lease a car. And it was like, wow, who knew I could have a partial lease of a horse? I don't have that yet. That is, I think, my next level. But
it's a great first step to thinking. If you think you want to own a horse, I highly recommend leasing one first because it gives you that foray into not only the responsibility, but also the cha-ching, right? The cost of owning that horse and just all the things that go into it, whether it's the stabling, the farrier care, the vet care, all that stuff.
Oh, it's
a great way to get your foot wet there.
Yeah. And this was a crazy thing that happened to me. I'll digress for just a second here. I'm over here at Cambria Stables in Yardley, Pennsylvania, and there was a gentleman there, and he was taking his daughter for a ride. She was a teenager. And so I was coming out with my horse, DJ. And so I was already off him. So I was walking him back to the barn to untack him. And so the father stops me and he's like, hey, who's this? Who's this guy? And I said, well, this is DJ. And he goes, did you say DJ? And I go, yeah, this is DJ. And so he said, Jessica, this blew my mind. He goes, I had a brother that passed. Aww. My brother's name was DJ.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, oh my God. Aww. And I said, that means something. That was his first visit to the barn.
Oh, wow.
It was the most incredible thing. And out of everybody, right? Like sometimes I ride Sparky and sometimes I ride Belle and Chewy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't get to ride DJ a whole lot, but that day I happened to ride DJ. It was our first 90-degree day in May here in Yardley. He was already tacked up when I started to ride him. So it just was like, horseback riding it's such an incredible, it's much more than just getting on a horse. It really humanizes you and grounds you to nature. I feel like if you work on computers and data, all this kind of technology, that we need something to nullify the effects of it.
Yeah, it makes you feel alive again. So
yeah, for sure. For sure. What a powerful sport it is for women. I see 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 50-year-olds. You can do
70-year-olds. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They could put people all in the same ring. So that's really exciting.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because just to get back to the female aspect of it, I think, I could be wrong, but I think the equestrian portion of the Olympics is the only co-ed Olympic sport that there is, because you're all on equal footing, so to speak. So
Right.
Yeah, the men and women compete together.
I also found that you were part of a coronavirus research study. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So back when COVID started, school was out and we were all home and not able to do anything really. And you just feel you're going about your business. You're doing what you can do, wearing masks, washing your hands, making sure you're protecting the most vulnerable in our community. As I mentioned, my parents are 70. I wanted to help protect them as well. And you feeling so helpless, just waiting for something to change, waiting for a vaccine to come out, waiting for cases to go down. I was on the internet the one day and I saw they were looking for volunteers for a vaccine study as the vaccines were being tested and developed. And I thought, what? I got over my fear of needles a long time ago. And I'm my children are here thanks to IVF. So I'm a big proponent of science and getting that moving forward. So I signed up for it and they gave me a call right before Christmas in 2020. Would it have been? Yes. And told me to come on in. But you go through those preliminary medical screenings to make sure you're a good candidate, you're healthy, you don't have any pre-existing conditions that would preclude you. But it was very simple and it's something that's still ongoing. So I think the study continues through the end of this year. But yeah, it was getting that initial dose of vaccine and then going in for a second dose and reporting back. I have a little app on my phone that they ping me periodically asking if I feel like I have any symptoms that could be related to COVID. And of course, if I ever did test positive, I'd have to let them know right away. But yeah, it just made me feel like it was a step I could take to do something to help to get these vaccines rolled out, to get folks getting back to normal. So I was really excited I got the chance to do that.
We have so much gratitude for people like you because, again, we all remember what that March 2020 felt like and not knowing. Yeah. And people that were donating antibodies and now you being part of that research study, there was a lot that we learned that the drug makers also learned because of people like you that were part of that research study. So I want to thank you because what you did there helped to protect the population. I think that's really cool. Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that and being open to converse about that. I know I have an awesome last question this year in season 3. But before I ask it really quick, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
You can go to our website, which is www.independentadvisoralliance.com, advisor with an O. You could go there. You can also email me at jsexton, SEXTON, at IAARIA.com. My contact info is on the website, of course. So those are probably the best ways to get in touch with me.
Yeah. And her beautiful pictures there too. So we'll make sure that we have a link for the website. And I also noticed that you're on LinkedIn too. So there's probably people that want to connect with you there as well. Absolutely. So the last question that we're closing off with this question. Can you introduce us to either a charity, a nonprofit, a GoFundMe, a cause that you believe in and tell us why?
Sure. I'll name 2 if that's okay. Sure. The first one, most folks have probably heard of, and that's the Rotary Foundation. So your local Rotary Club, right? We've all heard of that. But they really do great work. And it's really all encompassing. So they help people not only in this country, but around the world, getting access to medicine, getting access to medical care, clean water. things we take for granted, electricity, just turning the lights on in the morning. A lot of folks, even in this country, don't have that. So they're a really great organization that I highly recommend anyone check out. They've got a great rating as well as a charity, right? A lot of times you hear about donating to a charity and you're like, where's this money really going? And what are they really doing with this? But they have an amazing rating as well as a charity and have really done good work for so many decades. The other one that I really love, which is one that IAA has participated in for quite a few years, is called Communities in Schools. So it's a local organization that helps underprivileged children in our local community, making sure they stay in school, making sure they have the resources and mentorship they need to get through school. A lot of these kids are quote unquote latchkey kids. They come home to an empty home. Their parents are working at least one job, a lot of times 2 or 3, and just don't have time to help their kids with school and really are sort of separated from them in that regard. So it provides them with the resources they need to get that not only onto college, forget that, but just to get a high school diploma. We take that for granted as well. So it's another amazing charity that I really love.
You see why this is such a great question. I don't know if I could I don't know. This might have to just continue throughout the life of the podcast. Really great information. Really fantastic. We're going to make sure that we have a link in the show notes. You've been so inspiring and so gracious with your time, Jessica. Loved it. Our first Chief Compliance Officer here in the suite, and had just such a phenomenal discussion with you today. I want to thank you so much for just inspiring us, educating us. Really had fun with you today.
Thanks. So did I. We'll have to connect afterwards to talk about horses some more.
For sure. Or if I'm in North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. Please let me know.
Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
You too.
You're listening to In the Suite, a podcast that shares amazing stories of women in business in the financial services and the wealth management industry. Our producers are Tina Powell and Kevin Hirshorn. Our editor-at-large is Kevin Hirshorn. Our content writers are Dimple Rashandani, Daniel Wheeler, and Tina Powell. Please let us know how you enjoyed this episode with Jessica Sexton and share your thoughts on social media, #InTheSuite. You can connect with Jessica on LinkedIn, and please visit her website at Independent Advisor Alliance, that's all one word, .com, to learn more about her firm and, most importantly, her passion for compliance. In the Suite podcast is sponsored by C-Suite Social Media, a high-growth digital marketing and social media agency for financial services and wealth management. You can visit us at csuitesocialmedia.com to learn more. And thank you so much for listening, subscribing, giving us 5-star reviews. We are so grateful for you. This week, we reached a huge milestone. We're in 60 countries and 1,167 cities. We owe it all to you. That number really makes us extremely proud of the work that we're doing here. So thank you so much. And if you want to pitch a guest for season 4, 2023, feel free to email me at tina@inthesuitepodcast.com. Again, somebody you want to see here in the suite, we're happy to take a look and consider it. Again, thank you so much for listening and subscribing to In the Suite.